Hello everyone, welcome back to the Ghosts of Essex. So there are some short but sweet ghost sightings that are still worth a mention. And I guess these are the ones that show you that they do have very different characters. Ghosts galore, I guess. Helpful. The helpful ghosts. Stately homes and manor houses can usually boast a stately ghost or two. Perhaps an aristocrat lady or a knight with a suitably historic pedigree, but others find that their particular apparition may come from below stairs, and rather than drifting aimlessly along the battlements or causing odd drafts in the great hall, ghostly servants have sometimes been known to make themselves very useful. The manor house at Whaley has long enjoyed the services of a very helpful ghost. One past resident was surprised and pleased to find that while he was out of his room, had been mysteriously tidied up completely while he was out. And he came back in, everything was nice and tidy. And even more amazing, once a complete dinner service was moved from the kitchen dresser, cleaned and returned. And not content with this, the ghostly housekeeper gave the whole kitchen a good spring clean. Some occupants of the manor house were conscious of a presence, and others more sensitive actually glimpsed an elderly lady who apparently had a habit of losing her old-fashioned hairpins, which were scattered all over the house. At times various items would disappear and turn up elsewhere, but most residents were happy with their ghostly home help's little ways. Very interesting indeed. A hospital haunt. The Essex County Hospital at Colchester seems a very unlikely place for a ghost story, especially in the children's ward. But a local man has never forgotten what happened when he was a patient there as a child. He was in bed there one night when he saw a nun in a black habit coming towards him. She spoke kindly to him and gave him a toffee from a brown paper bag she was carrying. Surprised, he popped it in his mouth and watched as she walked on down the ward. He couldn't believe it when she then just disappeared in front of his eyes, like she never existed. Though it does not state if the sweet was real and he really had it in his mouth. Father William's return. Father William was a remarkable old Essex character, and several stories about him can be found in S.L. Benswin's books on the county. Ben Susan lived near the mouth of Blackwater estuary, and Father William inhabited a small thatched cottage near the next house to where they were. So I guess they lived side by side. And he'd been there for nearly 90 years, it says. When Ben Susan was away from home, some well-meaning people, thinking that the old man could no longer look after himself properly at his age, removed him to the local workhouse despite his protests. When Ben Susan returned home, he was horrified to find out what had happened to his old friend, and even more horrified on arriving at the workhouse to discover that Father William had died. The workhouse master, obviously at a loss to explain the old man's fate, said, "I can't understand it. The old chap was living all alone, scratching for himself, uncared for, and probably not one square meal a day. And here, he pines away and dies." "So would a wild bird if you put it in a cage," replied Ben Susan. An elderly widow moved into the old man's cottage not so long after. And it was only shortly after that she actually came to see Ben Susan in a state of alarm. When she went into the sitting room, she had found the ghost of Father William sitting in an armchair in front of the fireplace, just as he used to do. And for a few nights afterwards, he was there in his old chair, returned in spirit to the home he loved. The Haunted Homeware Shop. In the late 50s and early 60s, Many an old cinema fell on hard times, and this was the fate of Clacton's old cinema, and it was actually spelt kinema with a K. Even while it was in use, there were rumours that it was haunted, and this was thought to be connected with the suicide of a projectionist who had been overwhelmed with grief when his son was killed during the war. After the cinema closed, it stayed empty for some time. Then the building was reconstructed and became a shop that was ultimately taken over by a well-known wallpaper and paint business. Then in the late 80s, a young girl working there had a frightening experience. She'd gone up to the storeroom at the top floor, but came running back down the stairs and said she had seen an old man up there. As she described him, he sounded like a figure from one of the old gangster movies, which must often have been the programme at the old cinema. With his sleek, brilliant hair and pinstripe suit, this George Raft lookalike took no notice of her at all, and the young girl assistant, in a state of shock, had turned and ran. There were other sightings of the same figure, and two other assistants, they were standing together in one of the upper rooms one day when they both felt a hand placed on their shoulders, and as they turned to look, they were roughly flung aside by a misty shape which rushed towards the wall and disappeared. A young male assistant was sent upstairs on another occasion to get a particular roll of paper from the stock. And as he looked around for it, he could hear someone coming up the stairs. Thinking it was the manager, he called out, but when there was no reply, he went to the top of the stairs. To his amazement, there was no one in sight. Yet the footsteps continued up the stairs towards him, passed by him, and then went towards a staff room where the door was open. Stranger still, the footsteps turned into the staff room, and the door then closed with a bang. And another time, when the same young man was upstairs, all the doors to the various rooms up there began to slam backwards and forwards at the same time. The shop was refitted in 1993, and two workmen from London firm decided to save money by camping out in one of the upper rooms instead of taking lodgings. However, after one night they changed their minds, as they didn't get a wink of sleep due to the heavy-footed ghost stomping about all night long. Punctual ghosts. There are ghosts who appear regular as clockwork on a certain date, and Sir John Gates is one of these. Bailey Abbey at Malden was once his home, which he is said to have bought for £300 in 1537. And although he held various high positions, including High Sheriff of Essex, in 1549, he unfortunately became involved in a plot to put Lady Jane Grey on the throne and paid the price on Tower Hill, where he was beheaded on the 22nd of August 1553. Bailey Abbey had by that time passed into other hands, but the haunting wailing around the house on August the 11th each year is believed to be Sir John's cries of misery at his imminent execution. On the actual anniversary of his death, his headless apparition has been seen in the James's room. This particular room has a history of strange happenings. People in there have had the sensation of being watched. On one occasion, it's said a housekeeper seemed to see a hooded figure, which she assumed seemed to be, or may not have been, but seemed to be a monk. The abbey, a monastery for monks of the, I think it's the Cistercian order in the 12th century, and was partly destroyed under the dissolution of the monastery acts in Henry VIII's time. Curious about the happenings in the James room, one of the abbey's owners decided one night to sleep there for the first time, but it proved to be an unforgettable experience. She woke up at about 3 a.m. to find the heavy four-post bed on which she lay was shaking violently, and in fact, everything in the room itself seemed to be shaking in an alarming manner. In addition, she found that her arm felt very painful and swollen as a result of what seemed to be a large bite. She visited the hospital the next morning. Although the doctor said it certainly was not a mosquito bite, he was at a loss to identify it, and it seemed more like the bite of a tropical creature of some kind. Well, ghosts don't bite, do they? So what attacked the Abbey's owner that night in the haunted James room? The lovely old Abbey is obviously a place of many strange secrets. And here's another. A few years ago, when there was a lengthy drought and a consequent shortage of water in rivers and ponds, it seemed a good time to clear out the Abbey pond. And down in the mud and silt, a grisly heap of human skeletons were uncovered. At some period during the Abbey's long history, they must have been deposited there. But why? And who are they? It seems hardly surprising that poor Sir John Gates is not Bailey Abbey's only ghost. The end. Thank you for listening. We'll continue with these next time. Many blessings.